Why don't we call the meeting to order? And Jeff, because you're leaving the meeting early tonight because it's your birthday. By the way, happy birthday. You can leave.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jeff.
Oh, Jeff. Wow.
I made it
Shall we
another year.
sing?
Happy birthday, Jeff.
Does
What,
the Harbor Commission sing?
No, I hope not.
No.
Gosh.
no. What anniversary of your 39th birthday?
Yeah, like my 30th, my 20th, actually.
Good for you.
Thanks. All right, I pledge allegiance
Allegiance.
to the flag,
The flag,
United States of
United
America,
States of America,
and to the
and to the
republic for which it
republic for which it
stands,
which stands,
one nation,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
God bless our troops, in the words of Tony DeAndrea.
That's true.
Okay, we're gonna change the order. You're gonna have to, you have to indulge me, Pinto, a little bit. We're gonna move to plans and recommendations, and then there's a motion that we need to put forward. It's under Dennis's thing, but I think that's your committee there, Jeff, and you're the one that was instrumental in making those changes and put it together. So,
Well, Dennis and Alan were also in on that
Yeah.
too, so I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. That's for
yeah,
sure.
but this way, at least you could say you did something before you left the meeting.
Well, I'm okay to stay in the meeting for a little while, you know.
All right. So explain what was done and where we're at and where we're going with that particular subject.
Okay, so we had a meeting with the city along with council of the city. And they stated that there shouldn't be any reason why we cannot pursue an increase in mooring fees. And we asked we stated what we would like to do. So in that meeting was some counsel from Norwalk, Jessica and Jeff Stedman as well. So the next thing that we had to do was to generate a proposal for this increase and then submit it into the city. And Jeff Stedman stated that we should take a vote on this with the committee. So I believe that the information was sent to everyone with the proposed mooring fee, and this is only a mooring fee. It has nothing to do with slip fees or anything like that. So if you've all had a moment or time to read through that, or I can read it, it doesn't really matter.
Why don't you read it? It's short. Why don't you read it into the record, please?
Sure. It's dated February 23rd, 2022, to Norwalk Common Council, City of Norwalk Recreation and Parks Committee. From City of Norwalk Harbor Management Commission, NHMC. Reason: change to mooring fees to be effective immediately upon approval. These changes are made in accordance with the Connecticut General Statute Title 22A-113S, the Harbor Management Commission Rules and Regulations for Mooring and Anchoring Vessels in Norwalk Harbor, Paragraph 9, Section D, and Norwalk Harbor Management Plan. Norwalk Harbor Management Commission proposes the following changes to the mooring fee structure to be effective immediately upon approval by the City of Norwalk Common Council. Mooring fees will be changed from a per foot basis to that of a flat rate. The current per foot fee is $3 per foot. The proposed flat rate mooring fee is $100 per vessel, regardless of length. The proposed change in the fee structure will simplify the accounting process for all parties, mooring holders, and the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission, and provide less confusion of the fee schedule, not only for individual mooring holders, but for yacht clubs who oversee large managed fields. Clubs with large managed fields include Norwalk Yacht Club, Rowayton Yacht Club, and Sprite Island Yacht Club. This change will
Obviate.
obviate, sorry, will obviate the, sorry, I lost my spot here. The proposal mooring fees, will obviate the need to confirm vessel lengths from vessel registration documents, eliminate confusion over fractional lengths of vessel, and enable faster approval of mooring permits by the state of Connecticut Harbor Master. Proposed mooring fee structure is as follows. The type, an online mooring private, is $3 per foot, current rate. Proposed rate is $100 per vessel. Managed mooring fields, $3 per foot, 100 and is the current rate. And the proposed rate is $100 per vessel less 25% discount. And then commercial moorings, $3 or currently $30 per foot. And the proposed rate is $200 per vessel. Commercial moorings include, but are not limited to, any mooring that is associated with a commercial entity, such as a commercial marina, and any other commercial operation that requires a mooring permit. This does not include private clubs and nonprofit organizations. As per Connecticut statute, the maximum annual mooring fee is limited to $200 per mooring. Connecticut General Statute Title 22A, Environmental Protection, Chapter 444A, Harbor Management Commission Section 22A-113S permit fee. And then there's the Section 22A-113S. The commission may propose a fee schedule for a permit for a mooring or anchorage or any other activity within the scope of the plan to be adopted by vote of the legislative body of each town establishing the commission. The maximum annual fee for the mooring or anchorage shall be $200. The harbor master or deputy harbor master for the municipality shall collect such fee. Any fee collected pursuant to this section shall be deposited into a fund maintained by the municipality in which such fee was collected, and shall be used to maintain and improve the harbor for the public and for expenses for personnel and equipment directly related to the function of the commission and the harbor master or deputy harbor master. And then under the Management Commission rules and regulations for mooring and anchoring vessels, paragraph 9, section D. Section D, when proposing a mooring permit fee schedule for adaptation by the Norwalk Common Council, the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission may differentiate fees for recreational and commercial vessels, consider reduced fees for duly established nonprofit organizations, and consider special fees for placement of mooring tackle used to secure floating docks to which vessels may be attached. And that's that nonprofit organization, for the purpose of the rules and regulation, nonprofit organization means an incorporated organization which exists for educational or charitable purposes, does not operate for profit, and is granted tax exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. Respectfully, Norwalk Harbor Management.
All right, I need a second to that motion, please.
Alan, I'll second.
Alan seconds it. And now discussion on the motion. Now, Jeff, once we approve this tonight, then this gets forward to the Parks and Recs committee of the council, correct?
Correct. We'll send it off to Jessica and she'll push it
Right.
through.
Okay, then from there, then it will go to the council. And the way the system works, that's not going to happen until sometime. Earliest could be the end of March, could be into April. So all the mooring bills have been sent out. Do you want to entertain a modification of the language that's in there that says immediately upon approval? And the reason for it is because, correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis, all of the mooring letters and requirements and all that have been already established. So this would be and maybe a language change if we agree on it would be that this is effective January 1, 2023. Let's discuss it. Dennis, you're muted.
John, if I interrupt a little bit, yeah, the system is in the works. People have made payments. There are anticipations of making future payments, obviously, but it's going to be a little difficult in midterm to turn this around, to be honest with you, without a lot of work. And some people will owe money, some people will get money back. So I don't know how you're going to do that, but I would suggest we do it in next year.
Yeah, I mean, that horse has left the cart already because we already sent out the renewal packages. So
Sure.
That's my thought. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I kind of agree with you, John. I think, it's difficult to do this retroactively. We're going to have enough of a challenge. I brought it to a bunch of members at Sprite, just telling them that this was on the horizon, and I got a lot of feedback.
Right.
But I think that if we plan accordingly and expect it to start in calendar year 2023, it's more tangible. I think if we go ahead and try to do it, because no offense to the city, but I have a funny feeling that March is going to end up being May, and May is going to end up being July, and by the time bills are
Possibly,
going out.
but not only that, it's the managed fields that they put their budgets together, and
Correct.
this will be enough of a heads up for them to adjust their charges, because I'm sure they're going to tack on whatever the differential is to their mooring fees. So,
Well, actually,
Exactly.
John, so I ran some numbers on that very specific subject. And it's pretty much going to be about the same. It depends on what the footage is.
right.
So some years it's a little bit longer total feet, and sometimes it's a little bit less. But the good thing about this is that if you have 50 moorings, say, you know what you have to pay. So budgeting is going to be very simple.
Correct.
So what is the delta? Is this an actual increase? I have $100 means your average vessel is 33 feet. 33 feet's on the bigger side. But for a managed field, it's $75 because they got a 25% discount. Then you're down to like an average of 25 feet. And I don't see a lot of vessels out there that are less than 25 feet on moorings. And you certainly see a heck of a lot bigger ones out there, especially in Wilson Cove. So did you crunch the numbers? Are we giving money away on this to the clubs, or?
So I only had the numbers for the past 2 years. And 1 year they're getting a little bit of a break, and 1 year they're getting more money. So it was on an average.
So it's really not an increase. It's just the simplification is obvious, and that certainly would probably be better for everybody all around to have it a flat fee instead of like your letter says, chasing lengths and verifying lengths. But it isn't really an increase then.
Yeah,
it's an increase to the private fields, and it could be an increase to some of those.
I'm talking globally. It's not.
Yeah.
It's an increase if you have an 18-foot boat, but not an increase if you have a 50-foot boat.
Correct.
If I may, I went through an analysis a little bit regarding what we have. And for example, Sprite Island will be approximately $500 more than they did last year. Norwalk Yacht Club will be saving almost $2,000 from last year with the numbers. And Row 8 Club will maybe spend about $200 more. And the city docks will end up being a little bit more.
Right.
So
I can tell you that at Norwalk Yacht Club, they passed that directly to the boat owner.
Right.
Well,
And that's where I have an issue personally. I don't think the managed field should have gotten a discount.
I don't either. I think, Row 8, let's take Row 8 and Yacht Club. They pay the city, $100, and then they charge the slip holders, well over $1,000. Maybe it's Yes, and then they provide the launch and a lot of other services and maintaining the tackle. But the actual mooring fee is a fraction of their actual expense for running the mooring field.
It's
I mean,
funny because
Lori, what is the average? What does it cost to have a boat on a mooring for Rowayton Yacht Club, for Norwalk Yacht Club?
You know what? I don't know, Chris, because we don't have a boat on the mooring, but I
Okay.
did happen to see the mooring application and I noticed it said it will be X. I can ask my husband who's right here. It will be X to have a mooring plus what it said was plus any fees charged by the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission.
Yeah, but Matt will attest to his club where he is, they charge like in excess of $3,000 for a mooring.
No, it's actually just the opposite, John. We
What?
try to keep it as minimal as possible so that there's more boats being used. So the
I'm
feedback I
told it
got,
was $3,000 by someone, I forget who.
no, that might have been an initiation fee or something along those lines, but it certainly wasn't the mooring fee. Yeah, no, the mooring fee is typically in the high teens to low 20s. But that also takes into effect funds for the club to handle a lot of things. The club doesn't handle putting the moorings in. It's all done socially. It's not
Right.
that we pay, as someone do it, myself and a committee does it.
Yeah.
But, the feedback I got was kind of on the negative side, only because I guess to your point, Dennis, the average boat is about 21 feet. So you're looking at about $63 for, on an average year. So it's going to go up to 75 times, 60-ish boats, plus or minus, whatever that ends up coming to. Only because it's not really an expensive, the whole goal at that club is to have more using the water, have more out on their boats, have more boats included.
More members,
A
yeah.
lot of them are small.
Well, So your club would pay $75 a boat.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's $14 more.
Yeah, and again, I was trying to explain to people that, listen, gas is going to be $4 a gallon in a couple of weeks. This is really at the end of the day, what are we really talking about? This is an amazing opportunity to use a boat. And at the end of the day, it's a pretty small amount of money.
Yeah.
Look, so the numbers that I came up with from Dennis gave me some numbers. It was 3,000 for, and Matt, I'll talk to you with Sprite Island. I think you paid $3,066 in 2019 and $2,811 in 2020. So based on the $75 a foot and 44 vessels, not a foot, $75 per vessel. And in 2020, you had 44 vessels in the water, so that would be $3,300. So, if you base it on that, in 2019, the delta between 2019, you're paying $234 more. In 2020, you're paying
it's not significant.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's nothing if you go by per vessel. Then it's like $5 more a vessel in 2019 and $11.
All right, let's call the question for the vote. And all in favor of the motion as Jeff read it into the record?
With the amendment, with the change to January of 2023.
Yes.
I agree with that.
All in favor? Raise your hand.
Yeah. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Dennis is opposed? Okay. You want to make it more, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm losing money in some situations.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this is a start. This is a start. Then
No, we're done, John. You put something to the common council and you're done for 2-3 years. So
well, yes and no. We can revisit it every year. We can revisit it. Inflation.
In the bylaws.
7-8%.
you can, but let's.
We've been remiss. We have been remiss under the guise of just the mooring holders paying rather than having water dependent users paying as well. We need to get those other parts and components that we have into the system. That'll help tremendously down the road. And in lieu of that, we can revisit. See, the mooring fees should have been adjusted and changed at least 5 years ago, starting then. So maybe you do it every other year, you evaluate what's going on, but we need to do that. And Chris, your committee will be helpful if we can get some legs on having public access and putting in places for dinghies to hang their hat.
Yep.
So that'll be extremely helpful. So let's look forward to that. So the motion passed, and now we will go to application review. And I apologize, John, for changing the schedule around.
No problem. We have one application. It's a pre-application. Which one minute here. The application is for 24 Sable Avenue in Norwalk. And it's a pre-application that was put forth by Henry, I believe it's Hughes, and he plans to remove a portion of an existing seawall behind which will be replaced a 25 linear foot core logs, and they're going to be backfilling that area, about 32 cubic square feet of area in front of there, and allowing that area to sort of recolonize with adjacent vegetation. And in addition, he plans to construct a 3.5 foot by 10 foot timber pier extension and an 8 foot by 12.5 foot timber floating dock for private recreational boating. And I've asked Mr. Hiltz, who is the agent for the applicant, to give a sort of a brief overview of that project. And if anyone has any questions on that, I sent it down to you for review. But Mr. Hiltz, please.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and happy birthday, Jeff. In any event, this is a follow-up on an enforcement action from the DEP. Mr. Hughes, I guess an act of omission versus commission, basically tidied up what was a pretty bad area when he purchased the property. I think it was, a lot of debris and junk, around the area. And, he did a great job. And unfortunately, he did some stuff without permits that were necessary. The particular sticking point for the DEP was the section of seawall that basically kind of rounds out the property adjacent to the old boathouse. So there's an existing floating dock there that rests on the bottom. It's accessed basically by a ladder, kind of, from a barn door at the back of the boathouse. What we're proposing to do is eliminate, replace that with a floating dock of smaller size that will be accessed by the pier extension that, basically extends the wraparound walkway around the boathouse. And we'll suspend that on float stops above the substrate so the float doesn't sit on the bottom. And then as far as the seawall goes, if you look at the plans, the area between the seawall and the coastal jurisdiction limit, there's an area that's already kind of given over to like high marsh, like spicata grass and stickless. And in discussions with the DEP, I pointed out, I said, well, this would be high marsh anyways, so let's not dig too much up, and why don't we just leave what's there that's already propagating, get rid of the wall, put the coir logs in to provide some stability in the kind of the long short term, and then remove the fill that was associated with that section of seawall and let the adjacent vegetation just basically colonize it. So, that's suited for that site, and it will basically just be a continuation of what's already there, just, going landward somewhat.
John, I didn't realize that this was this a matter of a violation that he was referring to, that he was working in?
Yeah, there's actually, just so you know, there'll be a lot of violation remediation work coming down the pike in this area.
All right, because that was an issue that I was unaware of, from just from looking at the application itself.
Right.
I don't think we all, were privy to that information. So the wall and the stone, that whole area right there is under contention as far as, what did he do? What did the applicant do then that,
It's pretty much that semicircular seawall that's the sticking point for the DEP. The floating dock, obviously, we could remove that and do something like along the lines of a 440 dock separately if there wasn't a violation matter here. But, we're trying to do everything on one application, obviously. And because the matters of violation and it postdates 1995, it needs to be addressed under a full structures entitled wetlands permit. So that's why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. Yeah, Jeff.
You have a drawing, John, that you can show on the screen? I think I have one if you don't.
Yeah, no, what do you want to see, Jeff?
The proposed plan view.
All right, hold on a second.
And then if you could also tell us when the violation occurred.
this is all, this is all new information as far as I'm concerned.
Sorry, Jeff, I'm not really doing too well on the share thing.
Maybe I can if
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Chris, you got, okay.
Yeah.
Everyone was sent the application, so, thank you, Chris.
perhaps John could explain it a little bit. I see the curve in the
That
seawall.
curve right there, right there.
Exactly. This is basically the area where the quarry logs are proposed. That's where the seawall, you can see this dotted line, Jeff. That's the line of the seawall, okay?
And that's the unpermitted structure?
Exactly. So that's the structure that the DEP is taking issue with, right? So what we're doing is we're removing that. We're stacking 2 rows of quarry logs here and basically taking out a couple yards of soil that were, associated with this, with backfilling behind the seawall.
Mhm.
And where is the dock you talked about, John?
If you go,
Right down
here we
there.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. You can see the extension and the dock. Right now, the dock, if you look at the existing plan view, the existing dock just kind of hangs there in space. Yeah, like that.
And where is the southerly property boundary?
The southerly, this is a corner, Jeff. So you've got, you're basically on the corner of
Oh, I see. So
Yost Street and then, Sable Street. That might be helpful.
I
The
see.
access is, here's Yost, here's Sable. They have a driveway through 26. So they come in this way and there's the property.
Is that a city street or a private street at the bottom?
Yost,
Yes.
it's pretty much a paper street, I'd say, because as you can see, there's nothing, there's nothing going, it stops kind of right there in terms of, the adjacent property is the last thing on the street. And then there's like a line of rocks there, before you get to before you go drive in the water.
But it is a right of way though, right?
I guess.
Yes, yeah. These are all public city streets that dead end at the.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if they all dead end at the water. But you can basically. I used to live around the corner, so you can walk to the end here. The boathouse is fascinating. The structure's always fascinated me, so I always check it out.
Yeah.
But Harbor View is just off to the lower right here.
Exactly.
So this is the inlet that wraps around the back of Harbor View towards Manresa.
Yep.
And these all these streets go onto Woodward Ave.
Woodward Avenue, right, yeah.
And this, just so for reference, the boathouse itself is a pre-1939 structure. That's an old structure.
Yeah.
So the dock is going to be secured to the land structure.
It'll be adjacent to, it'll be secured by pilings, John.
Okay, right.
But there'll be no ramp. There'll just be a ladder access up.
Exactly, because
Oh.
there's not, you're not getting a lot of tidal like there's not a great tidal range between where the float will sit on the stops. And yeah, that's a good view. You can see the top of deck there. The boathouse itself is very low and, it obviously floods. What we're doing here is basically making sure that we, don't wed the float to it, so that it, hangs up on anything.
John, did the owner report the violation? How was the violation identified?
DP just started doing a sweep, Jeff. They do that on occasion. I think what they do is they'll assign one of their enforcement people to a list of, things that they've seen over time. And then they'll just say, okay, research all these things. And then they just start writing stuff up and then going down to the site and leaving their card.
When was that done, John, again?
When was the enforcement?
Yeah,
Last year.
this year. Okay.
That's when the seawall was built last year?
No. The seawall, I think, is a, pre or a post 95 seawall. I think Mr. Hughes purchased the property. Just not that it should have a lot of bearing, but Mr. Hughes is 97 years old. So I think that, he kind of like forged ahead. But again, if you look at historical photos of this site, prior to his ownership, there was a lot of junk in this property. It was basically a junkyard.
Oh.
So he's done a really, other than the matter at hand, he's done a really good job of tidying the place up.
Doc, when there's violations, and John Hills is saying that there's a whole bunch coming up the pike,
Yeah, well, that was sort of,
shouldn't we be notified?
well, you would think so.
We
think we'll have to-
specifically asked Deep to notify the commission when there are violations identified. And the purpose of doing that, besides knowing what's going on, is if there is a penalty assessed, we wanted the opportunity to discuss the penalty with the person penalized.
Where's that coming from? We haven't been,
Is that me?
no, I'm not sure.
So anybody that's not speaking, please mute yourself.
So John, was there a consent order involved with this, or is it?
Basically, when you get the notice of violation, you have to acknowledge it. You have to sign that you're going to consent. And in terms of, a penalty, what they do is they do a multiplier of the application fee. So I think what they intend to do in this regard is, the usual application fee is $660. I think they're going to multiply that by 4. So, that's kind of what their operating procedure seems to be.
Who's the DEP agent on that?
This is the enforcement lead is Jamie Sidoriak.
Well, the reason we bring this up, there are several things that are, not that this particular project is a big adverse impact, but we've asked in the past that Deep inform the commission of notices of violation.
Mm-hmm.
And we should reiterate that request in a letter. And we've also asked that when there are consent orders signed, that consideration be given to the funds not going into the state's general fund, but going towards what's called a supplemental environmental project in Norwalk Harbor.
Exactly. No, I can see your point there. I can't speak to that, but I understand the rationale.
I don't know. Is the person that, what was your name again, John? I'm sorry.
Sorry?
What was the DEP agent again?
Jamie Sidoriak.
Amy.
I actually talked with her yesterday, John, and not about this, but about some other things. And we can contact her. But,
Yeah.
the other consideration is the date of the violation, which the commission needs to consider how to deal with this, because the policy of the harbor management plan
Yeah.
distinguishes between encroachments or unpermitted work that occur prior to the effective date of the plan and violations that occur after the effective date. And the effective date of the plan is 1990. So,
Right.
if we were to say they have no objection to this moving forward to a permit application, we want to make clear that we're not setting a precedent
Exactly.
to excuse violations that took place after the plan.
After the fact application.
Well, a full application will need to state any violations within a property. So my experience is this: when I brought that application forward for Village Creek, well, we had to state some previous violations that we had in earlier work that we'd done. And because we were asking for forgiveness for something and not permission, we did get a fine. I think it was 3 or 4 times the application fee.
Yeah.
that the village, and I don't think that the commission was notified of the final finding from DEEP, but I don't know if that the whole fine was ever anything that was ever brought to the commission. So that was something extra Village Creek had to pay on top of the application fee.
But in that instance, Village Creek identified the violation itself.
Right.
And it wasn't something that was, so that was sort of a compelling reason why the commission didn't object to it going forward to a permit application.
But like you were saying, the DEEP still hit us with a fine for that, a multiple of the application fee. And I think it was 4 times the application fee, like what John said, this fellow is getting hit with.
But the issue is the commission just needs to recognize the policy, and the policy was, unless there's compelling reasons, violations that take place after the effective date of the harbor management plan should be removed rather than permitted after the fact, unless there are compelling reasons otherwise.
Which is what we're doing here, Jeff. I mean, the violation in question is that wall. And so what we're doing is we're removing the violation, but as part of the application, itself, we're now proposing to, modify the walkway around the boathouse and to also remove an unauthorized floating dock and replace it with a compliant floating dock.
So you're removing the violation. You're not just requesting the violation be approved after the fact. You're removing.
I think that is that what you. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
And I think that's significant then to be recognized if the commission has no objection to this moving forward. So that wouldn't be a violation, or that wouldn't be inconsistent with the policy.
That's correct.
We recognize that it took place, that the violation took place after the effective date of the plan, but the applicant is proposing to remove the violation rather than to request its after the fact approval.
Right.
And therefore the commission would have no objection, if that's what you choose to do, to it going forward to a permit application. And that we'd also resolve to reiterate the previous request of the Harbor Commission that the commission be notified of notices of violations that are issued in Norwalk Harbor.
Yeah, is this Jamie Sidoriak? Is she new to the DEP, or
Jamie's a newer person there. She works in the enforcement area, John. So she's basically under Brian Golombuski's and Kevin Zavoy.
All right. Because all of the other agents we've had good rapport with, and they've been, was it Sue Jacobson or,
I don't think that Jamie's, trying to, I think all you need to do is just tell her, hey, in the future, please let us know,
Village Creek's case got, Sue Jacobson had started the process, but then it got assigned to Jamie Sidoriak, and she was very reasonable when I worked with her, and that was going on 2-3 years ago. So it's been, and I think she was fairly new at that point. So if I get to guess, she's been there less than 5 years.
But still, under those circumstances, I think, yes, I think you're right, as far as the not the remediation, but the removal of the infraction. And then you're not asking to replace something and put something back in its place. Rather than going forward then with the dock. As far as the dock is concerned, I don't know if anyone has any issues with the placement of the dock and how it's situated. But I mean, under the circumstances, I think I should like to talk to her and find out when that violation was, so that we at least are on the same page. And then move forward with having certainly no objection to the application moving forward.
So a consultation form doesn't require listing previous violations, because I know the full application does.
Yeah, I mean, the application itself will obviously have, I think there's actually a box you check that says, is this application part of associated with an enforcement action?
Right. Well, I think you have to list every violation that, whether this application is part of it or not.
Yeah.
You're meant to, give a mea culpa on, your entire,
yeah,
of your history with deep
you
violations.
include in the application. In this instance, you'll have to include the notice of violations as one of the attachments.
Right.
Well, how many violations does he have in place there?
Sorry?
How many violations have been noted on his property?
Basically, it was just the floating dock and that seawall. The seawall was really the bone of contention, and he originally kind of balked at removing it, and I had to go around a few times with him and just say, look, it's not going to endanger your house. I mean, you're already overtopped by higher tides. You already have, high marsh growing landward of the seawall. So, he kind of, calmed down and, saw better, the better, path. He went from contentious to being like, okay, let's just resolve the issue.
And the dock does not encroach into the extension of that right of way.
No, it'll be tucked in right alongside the house there, the boathouse, Jeff. So
I think that right of way ends at their property. It doesn't extend to the water's edge, as I recall.
Hey, John Hiltz,
yes, sir.
you stated that there were other violations that are going to be coming. Did you mean this property or
No,
property?
No, maybe it does.
In the neighborhood, I'm aware of 2 or 3 other properties that, through either marine contractors in the area or informal discussions with the enforcement staff, have, been mentioned. So, I haven't received any direct inquiries from anybody, for my services as a result, but, I mean, they may or may not. I'm just saying that, that there appears to be some stuff in that body of water that are unauthorized and have, drawn the attention of the DEP.
Well, John, of the circumstances, if you, as a courtesy to the commission, if you come across those type of applications, can you just sort of, and it's part of your application, if you can just sort of make mention of that?
Sure.
Or call attention to the agent who is at the DEP agent who is involved in that.
Well, I think what I'll do as a follow up to this, John, is like, when I next talk to Jamie, I'm just going to say, it is, it's desirable that you bring, all these matters to, she should copy you guys on this.
We're gonna certainly make note of that in our sort of recommendation in the pre-application form.
Yeah. I mean, that's helpful. If nothing else, if you have that information on hand, when something like this comes across, your desk, I mean, you'll be able to say, okay, we're aware of it. We understand the background on why this is coming to us. And, this is, and, as Jeff pointed out, the policy that you guys have to adhere to, you're going to be able to make those decisions in advance of looking, of reviewing it. You'll have the background that you need to, make a better decision on it.
Right. Well, we can make a motion on this to move forward. With the caveat again, with finding out again when the infraction was and whether whether the agent. Now, this is a recommendation based on the DEP as far as what you do. Did they make the
Yeah,
recommendation?
no, this is, the procedure, John, is, you send a preliminary set of drawings up to Hartford to the analyst to say, okay, the pre-application review. And Jamie came back and as I mentioned, the original set of plans that I sent up retained the wall, that wall in question. And she said, you can't keep the wall. And Mr. Hughes was not too happy about that. And we had prolonged discussions about it. And finally, I, was able to sell him on what you're looking at now.
Okay.
He looked at it. I sent it to Jamie Sidoriak. She ran it up the flagpole, as far as, with her superiors and said, okay, yeah, we can do that. That's acceptable from our standpoint. So then I sent it to you guys, Shellfish Commission, Army, and Bureau of Agriculture. Army sent right back, Kevin Codley said doesn't have any issues with it, and it, appears to be a GP eligible activity.
Shellfish.
And Dave Carey, at Aquaculture, had no objections to it. I think he's happy to have that 10 by 22 float off the bottom there. And, Steve Bartush, he has the plans. They haven't reviewed it yet.
Well, under the circumstances, I don't know, I have no objection having the application move forward with our standard caveats in place, a discussion with certainly with the applicant's agent at the DEP to find out when the timing was so that we at least have full record of that in our comments. And then basically having the doc move forward the plans with our ability to review the doc when the final application comes into commission's review again.
And it would also be with the understanding that although the violation occurred after the effective date of the harbor management plan,
Yes.
the applicant is proposing to remove
Right.
the encroaching structure.
Encroaching structure, yeah. And
And
there was no replacement request.
And therefore, the commission would have no objection to it moving forward to a permit application while reserving the commission's right to continue to review it and provide additional comments as
Right.
more information may be provided.
Would anyone have like a second to that?
I'll second that.
Or, well, if someone have to make that motion, because
That's basically,
you're making the motion,
I can
John.
make that motion.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second that, John. I think especially with what John Helms is telling us about the past, I think it's a good concept to move forward with.
All right, all those in favor? Right, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so move forward. And I think that is it as far as our application review. I have one more item. I thought maybe if you indulge me, again, if anyone has seen the presentation that was put forward based on the Walk Bridge project. And I thought if in the interest of time, if we can just very quickly go through that, because we need to discuss some of the issues that are confronting. And if I could get Michelle, if I could get access to screen sharing, let me see.
You should be all set.
Okay, great. Okay. For those of you, this is the aerial view of Norwalk Harbor replacement, the project, and which Jeff has worked very diligently on and back and forth with several repetitions, and finally came up with this final sort of, I'll have to call it a work of art. It's really nicely done, Jeff. And it has several times. It's actually involves the different areas that have been discussed with regard to the proposal of the DEP's proposal for the replacement of the Walk Bridge project. And you can see on the top here, it talks about, again, the Walk Bridge, the vessel relocation site, which we'll talk about in a moment. And again, the issues dealing with the Water Street Marine staging area, the mooring, barge mooring areas and the Manresa staging area, and also the compensatory wetland mitigation site. And then lastly, the Eversource transmission line, just to give you an overview of what's going on. And so the first slide basically, involves the walk replacement project, talking about, and I guess we can read through this very quickly. And the
John, could I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, Jeff.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, just maybe before we look at these photos, we should provide an overview of what has to take place in the next.
Well, we can discuss it probably afterward, but yes, we need to discuss these areas basically, because these areas deal with pretty much the comments and recommendations that we need to move forward with regard to the petition that we attended today. We had the hearing petition for the Walk Bridge project, and these areas here particularly deal with the issues that we have at hand that we have to discuss.
Because the commission now, or the job after 7 years of working on this, is to provide recommendations into the public hearing process. So the public comment hearing where people talked was this afternoon.
Right.
But there's a written comment period. And the written comment period is until February 28th, which is, when's that? Next Monday.
Right.
So
But
the commission, and John being the spokesperson, since we petitioned for a public hearing, requested an extension of the comment period for the harbor management, for only the Harbor Management Commission. And the argument is that the Harbor Management Commission has a special standing in all of this, which is different than the standing of the general public. And the hearing officer recognized that and extended the comment period until March 7th. So that essentially gives us just another week, but with the understanding that the commission would hold a special meeting next week in conjunction or coordination with the Shellfish Commission meeting to discuss and agree on the final recommendations that the commission would make and submit to the hearing officer on this project. So it doesn't give us much time. And in making the argument for the extension of the comment period, we pointed out that DEEP has extended the comment period for other harbor management commissions in other public hearing processes, and we expected the same courtesy and consideration here. So we have a number of the issues that the commission raised and approved to pursue in a motion last month, and we put these slides together to illustrate the areas where those issues are especially important to address. And also, Chairman Romano and I attended the site visit a few weeks ago, which was a visit to educate the hearing officer of the project sites that are involved. And actually, John and I were the only people that had something to do with the city of Norwalk that participated in that site visit. And now we're moving through the public hearing process. And as we said, we have just a little over a week in order to get the final recommendations in. So I'm sorry to.
What I plan to do, we can go through this very quickly now, but I'll send all the members a copy of this. And if you can look at it, review it, make some thoughts, and then we have to meet again along with the Shellfish Commission, discuss what our plans are, and put some words down on paper, and then submit that to the basically hearing officer for March 7th, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, before 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yes, and also I might say, Pete, there's no one from the Shellfish Commission. Steve is working late, and Pete Johnson called a little before the meeting to say he's not feeling well. But they're both, of course, agreeable to having this special meeting next Thursday during the time of the Shellfish Commission meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Let's quickly review this, the slides here, because again, this all discusses again the target areas of our concern and the areas that we need to address. And so obviously the Walk Bridge project, the Walk Bridge replacement project in 2022. The Department of Transportation is proceeding with its plans to replace the railroad bridge This is a 5-year to 6-year project, which is the largest and most impactful infrastructure in Norwalk since construction of the I-95 in 1950. And this is that the project will have significant impact on Norwalk Harbor. It is being reviewed by the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission and the Shellfish Commission. And the following images in the project area are presented by the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission, Shellfish Commission, and the Water Quality Committee to help inform city residents and officials, the general public, and the state federal agencies prior to the February 23rd DEP public hearing. So again, these are all, again, this is our area of concern here. And then the next area involves sort of the overview of the entire area. At the onset of the Walk Bridge project, the Harbor Commission, Shellfish Commission advised the CONDOT that its construction plans must, to the maximum extent feasible, avoid significant adverse impacts on environmental quality in the harbor, including water quality, and otherwise be consistent with the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan. And obviously the reason for that is that we have a very heavily concentrated shellfish beds. And again, the entire Norwalk Harbor is a designated shellfish area. So we need to be concerned about the dredging and the work that's going on in this area, particularly with regard to the removal of that middle console here with regard to the dredging issues, and also some of the actual cutting and replacement of the steel in this big area here. Worried certainly about lead contamination. And then this is the historic railroad bridge itself. This is the issue here with regard to replacement. This overview of the South Norwalk and Norwalk River includes the Metro North Railroad Bridge and the South Norwalk Railroad Curve and the oyster shell adjoining I-95 over here. And then just to give an overview of the entire area between the Straffolino Bridge and the Walk Bridge here. This obviously is the concentrated area that we need to focus in on. Of course, just as a backup, these areas right in here are plans for remediation, for environmental remediation by the DEP. But again, this is our area of concern here. And then in the Upper Harbor, the Norwalk River upstream of the Walk Bridge is part of Norwalk Harbor and known as the Upper Harbor. And then the Upper Harbor is served by a federal navigation channel with an authorized depth of 10 feet up in here, and then obviously 12 feet in the outer harbor. In 1995, waterfront terminals operated in the Upper Harbor. Waterfront utilized the federal navigation channel for waterborne commerce and required opening of the bridge to pass upriver. Obviously, as of 2022, we have only one remains, and that's Divine Brothers up the head of the river.
I'll interrupt, John, and we can go through this quickly, but this afternoon when the DOT was explaining the benefits of the bridge, the emphasis was on the rail the rail transportation and making a more reliable bridge on the Northeast Corridor, a more resilient bridge. And there was less emphasis placed than there was at the beginning on facilitating future water-dependent development upstream of the bridge. Right. Because you know now that the city's zoning initiatives are going in a sort of in a different direction, so the likelihood in the future of there being future terminal facilities upstream of the bridge is not something that I think we can envision in the future. But again, today the emphasis for the DOT was on rail transportation, more reliable transportation, and the necessity of replacing the 100-plus-year-old bridge.
Yeah, and nothing dealing with operation of the Upper Harbor. Okay, so again, well, we have the Inner Harbor, the south of the Straffolino Bridge, Norwalk's Inner Harbor, is a vital center for recreational boating. And let's see, in addition, the entire Inner Harbor is designated by the Superior Court as a natural oyster and shellfish bed. Norwalk Harbor shellfish resources are the singular importance in the coast. And this is, again, what we're concerned about, especially when they do the dredging and the reconstruction of the bridge here, that we need to protect the outer area right here.
And John, the issue, of course, is that in the conditions in the draft permit,
well,
there are no conditions that require monitoring.
Adequate monitoring. And this is where we need, we got discussion from the Water Quality Committee and certainly the Shellfish Committee to consider monitoring on a basis based on what's referred to as the nephelometric turbidity units reaching a certain level. And then if they reach a certain level, that construction would come to a halt. They don't want to do that, obviously, and they want to continue construction through that. But we need some sort of assurances that what are those benchmarks that they'll help to follow for regarding the either the slowing down of the project or preventing sediment from reaching out in this outer harbor here.
But that presumes that there's some sort of monitoring of what the sediment conditions might be before
Right.
you get into a discussion of whether to shut it down or the work down or not. And right now, there is no requirement for monitoring turbidity outside of the project or downstream during construction. And that's something that we would recommend be included to strengthen the conditions. And we know now that the Connecticut Bureau of Aquaculture is supportive of that recommendation of the commission and will be supportive.
So as you pointed out, yeah, obviously it's not properly maintained or managed. The dredging, demolition, and other construction activities associated with the Walk Bridge project may be expected to cause significant adverse impacts on harbor, on water quality and shellfish resources here. So again, the only thing that they did agree or will do is to put these turbidity curtains down, which I don't think we feel is sufficient enough to compensate for a potential migration of sediment and any toxic material that is certainly in this area. Because this area right here has, to my knowledge, not been adequately dredged at all. And obviously this area right here in the middle stanchion here has never been dredged, never been touched. So we don't know exactly what's there, although they've done some water quality testing or soil testing in this area here. I don't think we have full access. Well, we do. We have access to what's there as far as what is in the sediment. Just south of the Walk Bridge, Stoffolino Bridge, the Norfolk Visitors Dock, and the Donovan Boating Center at Veterans Park, it's principal boating facilities, water dependent facilities seen between the bridges on the east side of the river in this older photo, were subsequently acquired by the Connecticut, will be used for construction. All right, so this is the area right here that they plan to use as a staging area where the old Neptune Boat Club is. And obviously they're going to be putting some work barges and platforms in this particular area right here, which is obviously adjacent to where the two excursion vessels are presently staged right here. All right. Yeah.
Well, that slide shows that that's only a year old. So that shows after the acquisition of those water dependent uses, the development of the staging area. The next slide, John, does.
Oh, this slide here, yeah.
Yeah.
Right in here.
And it also shows the constricted conditions between the two bridges.
Yeah, from here. And again, this is where the maritime vessel and the Seaport Association's vessels are currently moored right here.
Yeah, and if you go to the next slide.
Yeah, the thinking here is that, again, what they plan to do, at least in their proposal, was to dredge this area here, move the docks a little bit south of where they're currently located, and keep the vessels in operation here. And we are adamantly opposed to that. The Harbor Management, the Harbor Commission, and the
I thought their proposal was to move it further down Water Street.
well, yes, that is true, but they plan to also carry out this placement of the docks in this area here as well. That's
his presentation today. John Hennepin said that those vessels will be relocated to 6890
you'll
South
find
Water Street.
both.
But in their application, they have the option.
They have the option.
We don't want them to have an option.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No,
And it's, if you go to the next slide, John,
Yeah. So in here,
it shows where all that platforms are going to be placed.
well, yeah, you can see here again. This is where the staging area and the platforms are going to be placed here, right in here. All right, here's the bridge here, and this is a work platform here, and obviously there are going to be barges, work barges, all in this area right in here. Again, these curves that you see here are the turning radius of the maritime vessel and the Seaport Association vessel, as you can see, would be carrying right within the work area during the time of operation. our contention here is that this is not a safe maneuver and a safe environment for kids, family members to be boarding and unloading, passengers in this.
But the condition could be worked such that the vessels could use the new dock there for maintenance purposes, but not to
Board
discharge or pick up passengers during the project. So the way the permit is set up now is DOT would have an option to use either the new facility between the bridges or the 68 Water Street
Yeah,
project.
down in here.
But there's no criteria or condition under which, what are the conditions under which they could use between the bridges? So the harbor master previously submitted a letter stating opposition to doing that. And that was based on the review that was done by the Marine Police operating their vessel, and also DOT's own risk management study, which concluded that there were greater risks associated with operating the vessels here than downstream, but that the operators would wish to operate between the bridges, not for purposes of proximity to parking and other considerations. But this is the second major area of issue that the commission would address in its final comments. And we talked about this with Mr. Officer Lavallo now, who has all the authorities of the harbor master, and he's still of the opinion that he as the harbor master would not agree to having passenger vessels operate between the bridges during construction.
He also brought up, not a hypothetical, up live and personal event that happened several years ago with one of the boats, the Seaport or the Maritime boat.
It was a seaport vessel.
Where they lost power while they were trying to attempt to dock, and he had to rescue them. Otherwise, they were going to crash into the Straffolino Bridge.
They had lost power in here, and they actually had to rescue them and pull them away from, because they were just floating helplessly toward the abutments here.
Yeah, but
Well, anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. Go on, Jim.
and this will be another issue that has to do with the extent of the harbor master's authority, which I don't think we want to agree should be diminished in any way.
No, that's also being a bone of contention.
We'll get to that, in a few minutes here. We'll go through this quickly, but under the statutes, the harbor master has the authority to station all vessels riding at anchor, and that authority applies also to vessels at docks. So and make the argument that the harbor master's authority could trump the DEP's authority here, and I don't think we want to back off on that, but that will be discussed, in the next week.
So this is the proposed area right here for the second choice that they have for boarding and unloading passengers here of the Maritime vessel and the Seaport Association vessel here, and they would do some work in this area right here to make accommodations for passengers and people going in and out on those vessels here, rather than in this location down in here. So, and then what the DOT plans to do, and there was an application in that regard, is to build a bulkhead in this area right here, which differs from the type of bulkhead that was applied by the applicant themselves, not the applicant, the owner of the property, which is kind of interesting to us. Both the DOT and the applicant have put a dibs on putting a bulkhead in an area of two different types of designs. The owner of the property wants to put a bulkhead that extends where at the end of the riprap as it goes down from the top of his property, as all the riprap goes down, and put the bulkhead up at the foot of that embankment. And then what he can do is backfill that area and recapture probably about 15 feet of property, what we would classify as bulkhead creep on his behalf, where the DOT plans to put if they do put the bulkhead in, it'll be bulkhead right at the edge of the property that goes straight down, and the bulkhead would go up in that way, in that area right there. So we don't know as yet what is planned for that area and how they plan to resolve those issues there, which is certainly.
But this is another area, John, if just go back to that slide just for a bit. There's several interesting issues having to do with the use of these properties, including what use is made of the properties after the DOT no longer needs to.
Yeah, that includes this area right here.
Yes. Yes. And in the conditions, the draft conditions that the DEP has put into the permit, they talk about the need to have those properties redeveloped for water dependent uses. And that the DEP would be involved in selecting the potential developer or the plan that a developer would have for those properties to make sure that they are what they are developed for water dependent uses. John, go back to the 68 Water Street.
Yeah.
Only the one between the bridges is owned by the DOT and will be sold off, first offered to the city and then offered to private development with the whole DEP. The Water Street ones will remain owned by the person who's already put in the application. So the DOT has really no say in what happens after their lease.
No, Chris, that's
over.
not true.
There's just a moment. The DOT owns 90 Water Street. The DOT owns 90 Water Street, and they told us they were in negotiations with the 68 Water Street owner, and which we don't know what will happen there. But one of the interesting questions that we've raised with the DEP is the DOT is applying to bulkhead the 68 Water Street property, but they don't own the property. So can DEP issue a permit to someone to do work on someone's property that they don't own? The other issue is that the existing shoreline there was the subject of a violation that's never been corrected. And so is it proper for the state of Connecticut to fix a violation that the property owner never resolved or never resolved completely? So there are a number of issues having to do with the use of these properties. And I think that it deserves the attention of the commission. We don't know what's going to happen because well, anyway.
Well, the DEP knows the conundrum they're under. They
know the conundrum. We've been talking with it, and they've identified the conundrum to us.
And then the other issue too here is that in the permit that was again issued, that these water dependent uses, they gave them an outlet to consider not, for example, boating facilities or marina facilities, but also a walkway in that area to represent water dependent usage. But the DEP says, no, that's not the case.
Well, but John, and again, we're getting lost in the minutia and going on and on.
Yeah, we're only halfway through this, and
let's move on. Well, again, let's look at the mooring areas. Now, these areas right here are planned for where they plan to put the mooring barges. You know, obviously, a little south. Well, let's see, right here, a little south of the visitors dock, and then the South Anchorage, and then also out here toward Manresa Island, and of course, right where Manresa Island is with regard to the staging area there. So we need certainly some assurances that they're going to be consulting the harbor master with the placement of those vessels and the proper placement of those vessels, and they consider the harbor.
But John, that's a real significant matter.
Yes, I know.
Because the statute says that in the harbor management plan, that no vessel shall be placed in the harbor, moored in the harbor without a permit from the harbor master. And then the statute concerning the harbor master's authority said that the harbor master is responsible for stationing all vessels in the harbor. So when we discussed this recently with the DEP as to how they could issue the approval to use these areas as mooring areas without a permit or without discussion with the harbor master, the answer was that they're questioning whether the harbor master has authority to issue to regulate commercial vessels. And I think that's completely it's an interesting argument, but it's not supported by the statute. And if they were to continue that, I think we would want to ask the Attorney General's office to make a ruling about that.
Because it seems that every time the DEP changes hands or changes guard, there seems to be a different interpretation of the state statutes when it comes to some of the rules and regulations that were previously put in place. Obviously, this is the area right here of interest with regard to the Manresa Island people. This is the staging area in which the construction barges will be used to build the structures of the bridge here, and obviously transport those out toward the down toward the walk bridge area.
Well, there was an interesting comment made at the public comment period this afternoon.
Yeah.
That the DOT does not yet have permission from the owner of this property to use the property.
This area.
And that the owner of the property is now attempting or has requested to intervene in the public hearing process, which is quite interesting.
So, and again, all right, again, we're going back, we have wetlands mitigation that they plan to do around the water treatment plant, and then down around this bend over here, where replacement of new vegetation and removal of some of the old, some of the phragmites in area here, just to help cleanse again this area and again remediate the wetland area. Let's see, this is compensatory. Okay, this is all part of the same thing. We can move on. Let's see. This is the other issue that we're still faced with, and that is the Eversource transmission lines. As you know, Eversource is still in the process of trying to decide where their lines are going to go. Now, we got some indication, but there's nothing in paper, there's nothing in writing, and we haven't seen anything other than the DPW, according to Vanessa, has seen plans, but only verbally, plans in which the original design of the transmission line proposal is to go from behind the police station down in here, down Elizabeth Street, and then at the 68 Water Street, in between these two areas here, is to tunnel underneath this area right here. And the original design was to go under the visitors dock area right here, which we certainly have a major issue with of allowing them to do that. Then after several considerations and reiterations of their design, they then decided that they would be able to dredge and put a little bend in that location to bring their high tension wires under the harbor deep enough, and then bend it up and come along the side around in here, and then come up into the Vets Park, put their splicing area right in here, and then continue up along down toward 4 Point Street, and then reconnect the railroad trestle down in this area right here. So we have not seen these plans as yet, and do not know what their overall plans will entail, and whether they're able to carry out that process of bending, because they indicated that they would be able to. Basically, what they have to do is they're going to do the tunneling, horizontal tunneling, which has to go down, and they're going to go at least by 50 feet below the harbor here, make a bend coming in this way and then coming up in this area. So I have no idea whether that type of construction can be accomplished. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the horizontal techniques of drilling, that they're able to maneuver that drill in that capacity. But in any event, once they plan to do the drilling there, if it does that, then the wires are going to be pulled down through those conduits that they made in this area right here, that they dug here. So other than that, this is the statements that we had made. This is an overview of what we had need to discuss, and that is protecting water quality, which we discussed already, maintaining public navigation safety. What they have not put into place is to keep the harbor master, marine police in touch with any operation during the construction of dealing with water vessel traffic up and down the harbor, and that perchance if anything happens, who are they going to contact, or who should they contact? There's no information there of remaining some sort of coordination, and that's this fifth point here, maintaining coordination with the harbor master and local emergency services, perchance anything happens. So we have public navigation safety with regard to the marine vessels, seaport maritime vessel, the bulkhead planning down at the Water Street, ensuring future water dependent uses in areas that would be brought back to the city after the construction process is over, and then establishing some sort of coordination with the harbor master with dealing with moorings of the barges, commercial and the work barges in the area, to stay in contact with the harbor master and to get his okay and to get a permit for those vessel moorings. And then protecting again the quality of life in the shorefront in the residential area around Manhattan Island. you know, what plans to go on there. So these are the main points that we need to address and discuss and get our recommendations to the hearing officer by our March 7th deadline. And again, this was just a matter of thank you. And then it obviously acknowledges all of the commission members here, members of, again, the shelf mentioned the harbor master and others that have been involved in putting this all together, basically. And then obviously our signature here is Norwalk Harbor. And then of course, there are the other acknowledgements, Shellfish Commission, Water Quality Committee, et cetera. So that's it. I'll send this out to all of the commission members for their, you know, careful review. Try to orient everybody to what we need to do, and hopefully get a discussion next week. Anybody have any further comments?
Yeah, John, is the draft permit available online at the DOT?
I saved a copy of it, Alan. We can email that
Yeah,
PDF copy to everybody or
I can get that too. Yeah, I think Mike Roslinski sent us that was that document that he sent us. Met with him.
we saved that. That can be sent out quickly. And also we pulled out of the draft permit the proposed terms and conditions, which is what we would be what we've said in the submittals so far and in John and John's comments today, that the commission will be again, not to hold up the project or stop the project, but to strengthen the conditions that would be imposed on it. And that's what I think the job is now, to work on that.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll send this overview that we just saw here, the aerial views here of the harbor. Send out the draft the permit that was issued with the
Not issued, John. It's the draft permit that was posted.
draft permit there, and then perhaps even the letter of the comments that we made this afternoon.
Yeah.
I can send that out. So those 3 items I'll send out this evening to you.
Yeah, that would be very helpful to be able to look through the work the DOT has done.
Well, the work that the DOT has not done. Not yet.
John, Jeff, how do we find out more about the statement that was made today at the meeting that the owner of the property, Manresa, hasn't even given DOT permission?
Well, that was the first time we heard about that. That was brought up by one of the Manresa Neighborhood Coalition groups. Oh, you were there, weren't you, Laura? Yes, you were there.
Yeah, I heard it. I was shocked. I mean, because if the owner's not going to give them permission to use the land, then the whole thing is moot.
Well, we heard that right from the beginning, that during the so-called 60% design, that they still did not have full approval from the
NRG.
NRG, right, to have access to the harbor, to the Manresa. So.
Well, we were told that by DOT during the site visit that and they couldn't give us any more information, but that they're continuing to negotiate with the owner of 68 Water Street and the power plant site. So I don't know if they're just working on the terms of the agreement or we don't know anything about that other than just a little bit of information we've heard.
Yeah, but obviously there's something going on because we gained access to the property with security guards to get on there for the walkthrough for this the group that's mitigating.
Well, the
public hearing.
The DOT is not going to sign a lease with NRG until they have approval to use the site.
Right.
And NRG is out to make the most money they can off of the state of Connecticut. So they have an RFP out for development. They're playing, they're pursuing their own options.
Yeah, everybody's got a game.
Everybody's got a game. And if it doesn't get done in Norwalk, it'll get done in Mississippi or Alabama, and a whole bunch of jobs will go down there and won't be done in Connecticut. And there will be less, and there'll be less noise in South Norwalk.
Well,
Sikorsky will get to develop a helicopter that can fly the whole trust from Mississippi to Norwalk. So a lot of jobs there.
But the issues that have been of most concern up until now to the Harbor Commission have to do with the water quality monitoring, with the public safety issues concerning the continued operation of the passenger vessels between the bridges, with the future redevelopment of the properties that would be available for redevelopment, and the need for having a specific procedure for communication and coordination during the project with the harbor master and with the police, with emergency services. I think all of the things that we've talking about have been included in other permits that we've obtained copies of. And so all we can do is make the argument that it's appropriate and reasonable to include similar conditions in this permit. And that's what I see is protecting the public interest.
Does the whole commission have a copy of this slideshow?
I'm going to do that tonight, John.
Okay, and you're going to send to shellfish and to water quality, correct?
All right. I'll send.
Yeah, because they're going to need this, because this is going to be our format of our discussion.
All right, I'll do that.
Okay,
All right.
and
I'll send it out to Steve. I don't think I have the emails of all the members of the Shellfish Commission.
well, maybe Michelle can help out.
Well, I can send it to Steve, or I can send it to Pete. They'll get a copy, and I'll ask them to transmit that to the other members.
Whatever.
Joe, Mr. Snarline's here. We can, and he can distribute that to his committee members.
Okay.
But I'll get those 3 items out. That is the draft permit, the aerial view, which we just looked at, and then the comments that we made today to the hearing officer.
Right now, can we set a tentative date now for our special meeting?
I guess we could.
I would think it would be appropriate at this point. We have shellfish meeting on November 3rd, March 3rd.
March 3rd.
And the drop dead date is the 7th?
Yes, which is
pension?
Which is a Monday at 5 o'clock.
Right. So we're gonna need to do something fairly quickly. So are we looking at Friday?
Well,
I think we were looking at, John, having a special meeting of the Harbor Commission and the Shellfish Commission the night of the Shellfish Commission meeting.
Okay, so then let's
Thursday at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Is that when they meet?
well, it's shellfish, water quality meets at 6, and then shellfish meets at 7:15.
All right.
And their agendas are usually on the short side.
And I won't be that night.
But I'm sure from a big picture standpoint, that like we do, combine what we're doing on our meetings now, that could be incorporated into their meeting, but everybody has to have notice of the fact that it's going to be, could be a lengthy discussion.
All right. So Thursday at 6 o'clock?
Well, 6 o'clock is water quality.
Oh, all right.
And
Then
Joe, do you have an idea how long your agenda is going to be? Janita line?
I'm unmuting myself.
Okay.
I can't imagine it being half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay, and so I wonder if we can talk to Shellfish, that we can get their meeting started a little earlier. If Joe can commit to getting the water quality over at 6:45, then we could start at 7 rather than 7:15. Does that make sense?
perfect sense to me, but you'd have to talk to Shellfish people.
Well, we have a day or two to work that out. So let's try to accomplish that, and that everybody be prepared to come and participate in this joint meeting. Because at that point, we're gonna fine tune whatever our submission is gonna be. If there's any other, you'll have time, because you're gonna get to all that you're gonna get the slideshow, knowing what our concerns are. And if you have any additions that you want to add in terms of how, in the presentation, what should we change that makes it more
Yeah.
acceptable, that kind of thing. And we're gonna have a list of, I'm sure, Jeff, you'll be prepared with a list of bullet point items that we want to hone in on.
Words down on paper, yes. We'll get some words down on paper so that.
Yeah, but even our bullet points need to be fine tuned. I mean, looking at them.
Right.
Because they're not as much of a descriptor as they possibly could be.
But also, the deputy harbor master, Officer Lavallo, will be submitting his comments to reiterate the previous harbor master's comments. So he'll need to do that by next Monday, because the comment period for him has not been extended. We can reference his, but he's working on his statement now for submittal by Monday.
Right, but wouldn't we want to, big picture, put that in, incorporate it, because he comes under us anyway, he's part of the extension. Wouldn't we want to incorporate it in our presentation?
He also stands alone. He's a state official, John.
I do understand that, but he's a state official authorized and appointed by the governor, no question about it, but through our recommendation, and he sort of works at our behest as well.
Do it both ways.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we can have him do it by the 28th, send it in for him, and then also incorporate it, not reference it into the body of our
yes
presentation or comments. Because now what we need to drill in, protecting water quality. Well, that's a broad statement. That's where we need to, Chris McDonald and John, we need to drill in and say, okay, nobody's here from Shellfish, unfortunately, and Joe Schneedeline. You got to create talking points in terms of, here's a tutorial, what our expectation is, that we're going to have turbidity curtains, you're going to have 24-hour monitoring. That monitoring must be, and I'm just making up stuff now.
Yeah, no.
It might be true. It has to be accessible 24/7.
Yeah. Professor Hart is working on that for us, John.
Yep.
So he will have a specific recommendation for a condition to protect water quality. And we'll have and I anticipate we'll have a letter of support from the Bureau of Aquaculture to do that.
Dave Carey's already on board with much of the.
Yes.
That we got.
Right. So let's keep this ball rolling, because it's very important. We're
No kidding.
one last shot at it.
Let's hope it's a juggernaut.
And ensuring future water dependent uses. Well, we need just to hone up what their language is.
Yes.
We need to eliminate the public access part of it. Although public access is desirable, it does not constitute water dependent use.
Well, that's interestingly deep. When we talk with them, it seemed that their intent in the condition that they impose or put in the draft permit is the same as ours. That a principal site use that is not water dependent cannot be considered water dependent just by providing public access. And that's the language that's in the harbor management plan and that we would like to include here. And Deep was agreeable to that, I thought, during our discussion.
In principle, but that's not what it was in writing.
That's not what it is in writing. So what we would be doing is just strengthening that condition to achieve the goal that we have and that we assume or we understand is also DEP's goal.
Guys, if we're going to have a special meeting on this very shortly, should we table? We could go on for another 45 minutes. And we're rehashing a lot of stuff here. I hate to be impatient, but
we're basically finished, Chris. All right. Well, we're basically finished here. That, again, Mr. Chairman, that ends our report from application review.
Okay. Very good. Let's move on to the chairman's report. You guys have all heard pretty much what I've been involved with in doing. I just, Bruce Lavallo can't join us. He just had 50 cc's of blood taken out of his knee after his operation. So he's pilling it and chilling it. But he did mention that, and maybe Dennis could elaborate if he so chooses, that he's found many moorings that were not paid for and not paid for 3-4 years. And to his credit, he's playing hardball with all these people. He wants them to pay up all the money that they owe before we issue a permit for them for this year. So I just want to put that out there. So, you know, some people will have to be paying $300-400 to get their mooring stuff for this year. And he's gonna, you know, hold the installers of the tackle task too, as far as keeping him informed of what's out there and who hasn't paid. Because that's part of what we require for them too as well, didn't we, Dennis? That they couldn't drop tackle or remove it until we were paid, correct?
Well, it's their tackle and they paid for it. If they want to give a boating and they can move the tackle and take it out with them.
No, I understand that, but part of the trigger was that they had to be in the system and paid for the tackle.
Oh, yes. And I've been talking to Bruce, you know, almost every other day. We both came up with people that have not paid in a few years. And that was part of my gripe. And I really hate to say this, but before there was no communication on what was going on in the water, I was doing with the system. So now Bruce is doing both, and he's being very upfront with me and giving me all the information that he has. So I know what's going on now. I don't have a boat anymore, so I can't be out there. And that's frankly, that's what it was all about before, but we weren't getting the information. But anyway, we know the people, we're going after them. He has the teeth to pull the mooring if they don't pay. Whether we get the money or not is another story, but I think we're going to get rid of these people that we don't want anyway.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Jeff, do you have anything else to input or add?
No. Well, other than the status of the Greenwich, the case that originated in Greenwich and has an impact on all harbor management commissions. The oral arguments at the appellate court were last Monday. And I don't want to comment too much on those, but I think that the town of Greenwich is certainly, we need to pursue a legislative remedy to this with anticipation that the appellate court decision may not be favorable for harbor management commissions. And as you know, that what's being appealed is a Superior Court judge's decision that harbor management commissions have no authority to review applications for DEEP permits, which sort of is interesting compared to what we spent so much time on tonight. So that the focus now, I guess, is on how do we achieve an amendment to the Harbor Management Act that would clarify that the commission does have that authority and responsibility. So I guess there's more to come about that.
I mean, we're not the only ones that's involved in this fight. I mean, other commission members or commissions upstate, Stratford, Fairfield, they're certainly aware of and also farther north or farther.
And again, repeating ourselves, and some people want to move on, but another part of the issue is that for over a year, the town of Greenwich, in preparing its harbor management plan, negotiated with the DEEP to get agreement with the DEEP that a recommendation of the Harbor Management Commission that's supported by the policies of the plan is binding on state decisions unless the state shows cause otherwise. That's different than saying that a recommendation of the harbor management plan itself, which is already spelled out ahead of time, is binding. So DEEP had taken that latter position for a while, but they agreed to the former, that it's a recommendation of the commission. And it's only logical because if you think about it, everything we're doing with the walk bridge now is based on policies in the plan that have to do with protecting water quality, not with policies that say how the bridge itself should be built. It's not, we didn't specify in the plan how that would take place. So now DEEP is arguing that they didn't really mean that in the Greenwich plan. They always meant all along that it was a recommendation spelled out ahead of time in the plan. And that's the troubling part, because and then the judge went even further by saying that commissions have no authority to review DEEP actions. So that's, well, we'll see what happens, but I think it's agreed that there's no opportunity to get a legislative amendment this legislative season or session, that we're working towards it a year from now. So what happens in the interim is be quite interesting.
What is there actual news, or is this has anything come of this? I mean, we've heard all this before. I'm just wondering, what is there any news, or are we're still talking about the same thing?
We're still talking about the same thing, Chris, but what I did say is that last week was the oral arguments before the appeals court. And as a result of those oral arguments, it's the opinion of the town attorney's office in Greenwich that we should start focusing more on the legislative amendment.
So the appeals court has not made a decision. This is just the internal musings of Greenwich. Okay. Thank you.
And bring them up to speed on how DEEP is not really defending us in our position. Okay, moving right along. Shellfish is not here. Anything else under mooring and harbor safety, Jeff? I mean, Dennis?
Just a little bit. As you all know, the renewal applications have started, and we have been very busy responding to applicants' questions through emails, et cetera. Each mooring application is checked and emails are sent listing missing documents such as registration, insurance, checking tackle inspections, whether they're due or not, and whether they're paying. Under harbor safety, I'm not aware of any issues or concerns regarding harbor safety, unless I thought maybe Harbor Master Lavallo might have something, but I haven't heard from
Wait till the bridge starts. There'll be a lot of harbor safety issues.
I'm sure. Well, of course, the weather isn't, nobody's out there. So,
Right.
But anyway, that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Alan? Treasurers, finance?
There we go. Yeah, I sent you all a copy of our 2021 numbers that we have. They agree with the cities. We were sitting on $27,000 of money at the end of the year, which is a whole lot. That's kind of, we upped our ask to $24,000, and we received that. So I think that we have some money that we need to spend. I've asked Jeff for an invoice. We can get one, but also I think we have certainly enough money to plop 2 or 3 moorings in for transients this summer. So I've started. I've talked a lot with Bruce about that. He's going to get us a price on nice mooring balls, painted a bright color, stenciled with information about it's a city mooring and and I reached out to Ken Hughes at Recreation Parks to help us rustle up some dinghies, transient dinghy space at no cost to the person on the transient mooring. And also to sort of encourage him to look at the docwa.com platform for mooring reservations, but also for the city dock, the visitors dock, because that's it's used extensively. The docwa platform does a great job of marketing the destination as well. A lot of information is provided about the place you're going, where you're going to get your mooring or your slip, and I think that's a benefit to the city. So I'm waiting to hear back from Ken on that front.
All right, we today we looked at, because Bruce pulled it up, and I don't know if you've seen it. You may have, Alan, but we pulled up the original mooring location that we had prior to, and that was all approved by all the appropriate parties, those were removed when we did the last dredging. So it is the visitor's dock, that long pier that's there, that's closest to the channel, the southernmost portion of that, almost immediately there. And so your idea of using the inside shallow area on the other side of the fireboat is great, because it's right there. They'll have to row, less than 50 feet to tie off their dinghies.
Yeah, I talked to, I've been talking with Bruce a little bit. I didn't know where you can, how we pull that information up, because he didn't seem to know. But I think transient moorings need to be a 360-degree swing. I don't know if we have that kind of room.
Well,
there.
he had some thoughts about it. You need to talk with him, because he had
Right.
some ideas of adjusting the placements such as it was.
Yeah.
But in that vicinity.
Yeah, people with boaters going to a mooring expect that they just pick up the bow line and put it on a cleat and they're done, and the boat just follows the wind around.
Right.
People aren't accustomed to doing a front and back, and my experience at Shore and Country Club, where we used to have 7 of those, is that our maintenance guy was out there a couple times a day getting boaters untangled from the connecting line between the moorings. So it's something we don't want to do with transients. That's all.
Is that something that you can like describe, have a descriptor in dock law, that when you take one of these transient slips, that you're going to have to anchor front and rear, blah blah blah?
You could, but it's a little bit dependent on the length of the boat and how long the connecting lines are. And you're talking about taking a boat that's could be 22 feet or 45 feet perhaps. We have to decide on what our limits are. But so the lengths of the connecting lines and the space between the moorings limits the boats you can put there. So if we could find a place where the boat can swing, it's much simpler for transients and visitors, because that's what people are accustomed to. The front and back thing is very unique to our harbor here.
All right. Well, as a commission, we're really gaining legs and credibility for other things other than our watch guard over the bridge, Eversource and docks and stuff. We're being proactive. We got our hopefully our increase will be blessed in the mooring fees. We've got transient docks going in. Chris is diligently working on and meeting with people about these end of streets, which to me is a no-brainer. We should reclaim all these properties and try to convert them into areas that will either be good for launching or dinghies to stimulate the community to start utilizing the assets that we have here more than they are at the present time.
I think we ought to be reaching out with all this federal money that's coming back for infrastructure and all that. And I don't know how to do it with the city, but like the street ends, we should be able to get I've said this before, get some grant money so we can hire a designer to do some boards. There's some sketches of what these street ends might look like. So you really have something to sell the concept with,
Well, that's going to be.
I have a whole report prepared if you guys want to jump onto that, but let's, whatever you want.
Yeah, but that's going to be an easy do, because the city's asking us to get funds for them and maybe that's what you were going to report on, Chris, from the.
I can both report on the Vets Park update on the Vets Park dock rebuild, which is being designed by Race, as well as what we did since the last meeting in terms of street ends.
Right, and what part of that report that I read the minutes from that meeting, or this could have been other conversations that I had, that once the design is done, they're gonna look for us to go in to the Port Authority to see if we can get some underwriting for what they're gonna spend there too. I don't think that project's gonna happen this year, right, Chris? It's gonna be for the following season.
So I think they want to do it next winter.
Yeah, so,
Yes, it's obviously not going to get done before April.
right.
The design will be done this year. They want to do construction over the winter next year. So if we're writing grants, we probably have to start now. I don't think we're going to wait to the end of design to do a grant. You know, I think we have to do it on at least because we'll never meet the construction cycle. I don't think they want to design it and then wait a year for the grant to come in.
No.
What's
So-
being designed? What are we designing?
Okay, so do we want to take this in order? Or are we going to jump all over the place?
No, we're
Yeah, I
jumping.
have to drop off,
Jumping,
guys.
jumping is fine.
Okay, so do we need? We all know, right, that the DPW on behalf of the Parks and Rec has put out an RFP and has solicited Race Engineering to redesign the East Norwalk Basin docks. Okay, they are at the 30% design. There was a progress meeting last Thursday. They've presented several concepts. The one that they're most favorable towards would have 68 slips and be about 10,000 square feet of dock with and 766 linear feet. Now, that's a reduction in the number of slips. They don't putting any fingers in the backside anymore. There's two separate dock structures now, and this concept would actually join them, so it would be a continuous dock. They're kicking back, and the DPW did not put the landward pier as part of the replacement, which Race agrees was a mistake. I think it's a mistake too. That's probably in the worst shape out there. It's also low and would be topped at a fairly modest high tide. They've also proposed just putting a single. Currently, there's two separate main docks with two separate ramps. They're talking about joining them all together and just putting one single ramp in the middle. They're still bouncing around the concepts that hasn't been finalized. You know, I told them that the Harbor Commission would be in favor of maximizing the number of slips and not reducing them. They didn't count any slip spaces on the backside, although they didn't want to put fingers in the back. Anyways, I cautioned them that I think that the deep and quite possibly the Army Corps would have an issue with them increasing the square footage of the dockage as well as increasing the length. I mean, I don't think as a Harbor Commission, we have any problem with them maximizing dock space there, what they can get approved. But I caution them that deep often has problems with, if you increase the amount of square footage of dockage, you increase the shade on the benthic zone, et cetera, and that they don't always look highly upon that. So I was cautioning on that. They were interested in the grant. I told them I would talk to Jeff. Jeff Stedman seems to be the one who has the most inside knowledge on this. So Jeff, if we don't have to go through it now, but maybe if I could do a call with you sometime soon, just both for this and for the street ends. I think there's two possibilities there, and just, you know, what we could do. I don't know if they would want you to do it for them. I don't know if you would do it under the Harbor Commission billing or whether you could be an independent contractor to them. I don't know. But that's something they were interested in pursuing. I don't know whether it meets their funding and construction schedule. That's another story.
Jeff, why don't you weigh in right now, and then we'll continue with Chris.
Well, we've talked about this with the Connecticut Port Authority, and they have a significant amount of money that could be provided for these sorts of projects. But the way the Port Authority, and they have not yet announced when this next round of grants will be available for us to apply to. But their procedure is that the Harbor Commission should be the applicant. And that's who the Port Authority wants to deal with. And we would make the argument that the grant that we're applying for is consistent with the harbor management plan and serves to advance the goals of the harbor management plan.
Okay.
We prepared the grant for the visitors dock, even though the city actually submitted it, but now the Port Authority's procedures are a little bit different.
Okay. So yeah, Jeff, I guess we talked separately. You can let me know what kind of information we would need from them, what level of design, is it scope, is it budget, how much information do you think they'll need? But that's getting into the weeds, and we will certainly have to do that.
Chris, I have a question for you. You're saying that they're increasing the dock square footage?
The square footage, I believe the square footage now is 6,000 square feet. The proposal they were going forward with is 10,000 square feet. I know they're making it longer, both a little bit to the north and a little bit to the south, not like a whole lot, but.
My understanding is that the actual footprint is etched in stone in a 1969 agreement, or not a 1999 agreement, somewhere around that time frame when that was established.
Yeah,
Jeff, why don't you weigh in on this, please?
Well, that's what I was going to ask Chris, if there was any discussion about the fact that the marina is in the federal anchorage. And if they're proposing to extend the footprint of it, that you're increasing, well, it may be permissible, but it brings in another level of regulatory review, and it's that Section 408 permit. And I know Race has been asking us if we could provide the original permit that goes back to, I don't know, the 50s or 60s maybe, which I couldn't find. And then the Corps of Engineers archives has been closed for a while. But that issue of proposing an expansion of a facility in a federal anchorage is something that they knew about when we talked about it early on. Race is aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, I caution them a little on that. I didn't think in terms of the Army Corps and the basin, and that I thought of today. But I did talk to them about, that Deep is very sensitive about the actual square footage of dockage, and they don't like to have increases to that. So they may bump into a lot of different opinions about, actually increasing the size of the dock.
But it's also significant in terms of the permitting requirements.
Yes.
So if they were to propose just replacing it in place with the same square footage, the thought was that they could get approval through a certificate of permission instead of a full permit. But if they go for expansion, they'd need a full permit. But then the separate permit is the permit for use of a federal anchorage, and we can't apply for a grant from the Port Authority unless we have the permit in place, or we're pretty much assured that we're about to get it. So those are all, we raised all these to them.
Right. Right. You were at the first meeting, which I missed. So yeah, I think I don't know if they've thought that all the way through. I don't. I had my doubts whether they could actually increase the size of the dock, and then they're actually reducing the number of slips. Another question that came up about the dinghy. They would have dinghy space on the backside where there's less water. They didn't want to put fingers in there because there isn't a lot of water on the backside, although there is fingers now, especially to the northern end. But in the dinghies sort of are just tied up at the inside of the southern end. Do mooring holders pay extra to have their dinghies there, or are they just?
Yes.
They do.
Yeah.
They didn't know that.
It's not a free tie-up. I mean, you got to pay, I would think, to.
Well, I would think too, but do we know?
Well, no, not for a fact, no, because that goes through Parks and Rec, the application, right?
Yep. Right. They sort of said, oh, the harbor master gives them a key or something. They didn't know. Nobody seems to know. I mean, we don't facilitate them getting a free, tie up for their dinghy because it's gate controlled. You can't just walk on and off the dock.
Right.
It won't work for visitors because you won't be able to. It would have to be on the west side and the main channel for the visitors.
That's something to take up with Rexon Park, because there's no such thing in Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, in the application that gives gives rights to anyone that wants to tie a dock off in the East Basin.
No, I didn't think so. They didn't know. They seem to think they did. So that's important for them to know. You know, I don't know what they're doing and what they're not doing there. You're
saying they is referring to who?
Well, it's managed by Brexton Park.
Okay, all right.
And so presumably they're the ones who distribute the keys, the key cards, for the facility and collect, I mean, if they have unfilled slips at $48 a foot, that means they're not trying. We had a waiting list in Village Creek at $110 a foot for 20-foot slips.
What's the length of the maximum vessel there?
Now there's like 18 and 20 foot. Let me see what I don't have it in front of me. They were going to have mostly 20-foot slips with some 25-foot slips. So they were increasing the size a little bit, which is probably in marketing makes sense. They were going to have a few jet ski floats. I suppose they can vary that depending on what the market bears. I told them we've had great success putting smaller like whaler, for 13, 15-foot whalers on the backside, and not, you don't need a 20-foot finger for that. They didn't seem to buy that. They were too worried about the shallow water back there, which happens, at low tides. But again, it's theirs to manage and program. I was just trying to, to advocate for the dinghies as for the moorings, but and it looks like they maintain that. They don't know who's using it and why or what. So
Chris, did you talk to Vanessa about First Street?
Yeah, so that I'm just handling. Was just discussing the meeting that was the race's progress meeting, and there'll be another one. I just got the invitation. It's like end of April. So there's another one several months off. I spoke. So just for everybody's sake, we had a little internal meeting with Lori, Alan, and John Crespo to just talk over things as an internal working group. And then I went and had a call with Vanessa. It was actually the same day as the other meeting, but and talked about what the big list, where all these locations are, what some of the issues are with some of them in terms of the right of way, the neighbors squatting, things like that. And basically, so she's very supportive of it. And really likes the idea. So what she asked of me was to come up with a short list. She doesn't want to put all her resources into the list of, we're probably up around 15 different street ends. And I think, the long-term goal is to establish city ownership of all of them, whether we do anything with them now or not. But in terms of her resources, having somebody go in and check the records before she does anything with them. So what I'm going to suggest to her, and it was the short list we've talked about before, would be Loud Street in Harbor Shores, Kenora Street by the South Norwalk Boat Club, and then the main ones in East Norwalk would be First Street at Cove Ave, at the end of Cove Ave, and then I think Decker Street is the best one for the south end of the Anchorage. And I think what we would be asking Vanessa at this point would to establish for her own, for DPW's sake, that this is in fact, there are no easements, there are no other agreements other than what the tax maps show. Because I'm working off tax maps. And a little bit of information somebody from DPW got me last year. Before they touch anything, she keeps bringing up that we have to get conservation approval before they do any even cleanup on the street ends at the water's edge. I don't know what the Conservation's Commission, what their jurisdiction is in terms of, briefly working at the water's edge. When I looked them up on the city website, it seemed like they were more inland wetland than the harbor. But she seems very adamant that they need to be brought in, even before she could send a crew down there to pick up garbage and dead leaves.
Chris, would that be as simple as, and we could possibly do it within our budget, hiring a soil scientist to go out and evaluate what type of vegetation or whatever is
Well,
in areas?
I don't know if we're at that point. My request to Vanessa would just be to send a DPW crew down there to pick up the garbage, to pick up the dead leaves and dead trees, rake up the dead phragmite. And a lot of times the phragmite washes up. So it's not, they're not very pleasant places right now because there's a lot of crap. Some of it is actual garbage. Some of it is just, what floats up at the water's edge with the tides. That's the minimum I would think a DPW crew could do and should do. She didn't want to even do that without the Conservation Commission's blessing on this. So I don't understand what their what their mandate is under as a city commission. I was hoping somebody in the group could inform me a little better.
Generally speaking, that's why I mentioned the soil scientist. If you have a wetland scenario and you need a sign off, you generally get a report from a soil scientist. And a soil scientist has more to do with a wetland or an estuary or whatever. And they have, they recognize all the different product that may be there.
Right.
And then they'll come up with a possible remediation if there is such a stuff, or they'll say, no, you can clean it up or you can't clean it up, that kind of thing. And then you would submit that report, because the city loves, and all these agencies love third party. And
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, maybe they do. Maybe if we wanted to even do something as simple as put a bench in, we would need, to prove that it was on the upland and not not on wetland. I don't know. But in terms of just cleaning, we're not even to the point of, putting a bench in at this point. I think at this point, we're just talking about cleaning it up in terms of the DPW. And then, maybe if it's okay, I'll reach out to the chairman of the Conservation Commission just to find out what they would want. There's certainly varying levels. So to segue into the next concept here is what are we going to do with all these street ends, right? There are certainly, and I sort of came up with it, put it in three different categories, two of which are already basically in effect in the city of Norwalk. A very light use would be something like that is happening in Marvin Beach, where the Marvin Beach Association at which streets are those? Those are Norman, Wallace, and Marion. They have somebody has installed benches. There's access to the waterfront. There's access, through the seagrass, and there's sort of paths worn. I don't know if this is what anybody wants to encourage, but you go down there on a summer day, there's people sitting on the benches. It's tidy. The seawall it certainly looks in a newer, more improved state than in the surrounding area. And this is a fairly light use. This is just, I'm sure the neighborhood people there launch their kayaks and paddle boards as they wish. People sit down there on the benches as they walk they walk their dogs. That kind of light use, so that it is incorporated into the neighborhood. None of those street ends. There's no houses waterside of River Drive. There's private property, but it's a narrow slip that's contiguous. It's discontiguous, but it's owned by the house across the street.
Yeah.
Another level would be boat storage, and I'm not going to go all into this now, but I found a bunch of pictures of what they do in Newport, Rhode Island, where there's several, and there's one neighborhood where there's several street ends where there's either people have their boats tied up just at the end of the block. There's other blocks where there is actual kayak racks. And this is, I found all this information. It's all labeled on Google Earth. There's also Rhode Island, I think it's the equivalent of the DEP, where there's a state-run map, state assembled map that has all the street ends, has public waterfront access labeled. There's a Connecticut one as well. And there are things labeled like Veterans Park or, the park of Oyster Shell Park, quite a number of them, but the street ends are not part of that database. So that's something we could add to that. There is a DEP resource for waterfront access. And then the third would be more akin to what is happening on Rowayton Ave with the Rowayton dock. And that's a Norwalk Rexon Park facility, which is maintained by them and used presumably by mooring holders in the 5 Mile River, as well as there being like a gravel foreshore and a floating dock, which is the Rowayton public dock. I'm sure most people in Norwalk don't know about it because, Rowayton is its own thing. It's not like Bailey Beach. It's not a 6th taxing district. It seems to be. It's listed. Did a little research today. It is listed on Rexon Park as a Rexon Park facility. 6th taxing district refers to it as a city facility and not a 6th taxing district facility. So this is something else that is already happening in Rowayton, but that type of facility, I think that the space over by South Norwalk Boat Club would be a good candidate for that, and that is certainly something that will take a fair amount of development that'll need structure dredging and fill application. It'll need some engineering work. That's something, where we're talking not $1,000 a site to put a bench, but we're talking, $50,000, $100,000 maybe to really build out a facility. And then you have to have maintenance agreements and Rexon Park has to agree to maintain it and everything else. So, that would be a much bigger one, a bench or a kayak rack, whereas it might have issues with neighbors. There's other issues involved, and making sure the shoreline is clean and appealing there. Those are fairly light uses. And just one other note, they charge $150 a kayak at Calf Pasture Beach. There's no reason that if we did a kayak rack at Cove Ave or any other of a half dozen places, First Street, that you couldn't charge a going municipal rate for those things, and that could be administered, a lot of different ways. All questions to be answered, all possibilities.
Right.
So, with the commission's blessing, I'm going to go back to Vanessa with those 5 street ends just to get the ball rolling with something.
Those are logical locations. You can also talk to conservation and get their read on stuff.
Good, thank you, Jeff. Did you?
Just two things for figuring out what conservation wants. Why don't you just call Alexis Cheriketti? She's the staff to the Conservation Commission, and just ask her what they're talking about.
Okay, is that a planning and zoning person?
Yeah, she's in the planning and zoning department.
Okay, Cheriketti. Okay.
She's the city's environmental officer.
Okay.
And then the other thing is, and I'm sure you know this, and going back to the East Norwalk Marina, no matter what you do there, you're going to have to prove or attest or demonstrate that the facility is open to non-residents as well as city residents, and the fee is the same for both residents and non-residents.
They use the term open access several times, so they seem to be aware of that. Whether they'll implement it in their pricing policy, we'll see.
Well, they'll have to do that in order to get permission from the
board. They really should. Yep, they really should. And
that's part of the original agreement.
Right, and they should revise their fee schedule this year and not wait till they're forced to do it with an Army Corps permit.
And the policy, the proper name is the Corps of Engineers open to all on equal terms policy.
Open to all on equal terms, right? Yep.
I think the reason the Marvin Beach, those street ends on the east side of the the harbor. I think they pay for that all themselves. I think it's part of the there is a Marvin Beach Association with membership
Right.
and dues and all that. And so they look after their own hood, if you will, and keep that
Right.
nice, which is.
Yep. No, I think that's right. I think that's on the benches that it's the Marvin Beach Association, but it's that model. I think this, Marvin Beach wants to do it in their neighborhood. I think the city can certainly put a bench at the end of First Street and Second Street, or
Sure.
or down where we were looking at that application today, Sable and Yost, and there's several down there in Shorefront Park that all end at the water.
Also about protecting all the other street ends that you don't turn into a project. If it's public access, the DEP has street signs that they sell for $20. And Mike Silva and I had a conversation one time. He said, you get the signs and we'll put them where you tell us, which it's as easy as that. But
I didn't mention that, but I think signage for all of this is a key part of it, just to mark our territory, and also just for the public's sake, so the public walking around goes, oh, that is public, I can go there,
right.
And we'll get 10 extras because when the neighbors don't like them, and it's also something DPW is also in charge of all kinds of signage, and they technically owned a lot of the poles anyways, so.
Right.
They could also implement that for us if so I did bring that up with Vanessa. So
Good.
Now I'll include that as part of our ask with Vanessa.
All right.
Let me guess, where does Second Street stand in this mix, Chris?
Second Street's a good candidate. I think I said First Street just because it's there's no the neighbor of Second Street is the third taxing district office, which the side going towards Third Street is actually a park. So that's another one. I think that's a very good spot. I don't, Vanessa asked for a short list. I put First Street just because there's so much pedestrian traffic there in the summertime with the Mill Pond Park, with Overton's and the ice cream shops and all the restaurants there. People are always walking by there. And if there was a bench, nobody knows that there's public access on Overton's deck, unless you read the small print and walk past the stairs you get. But if people, I take my kids to Mr. Frosty, we go sit on the bench and
Exactly.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is that there's still a little bone of contention with Harbor. Is it
Harbor Lights?
Harbor Lights, and being encroaching in that area, along with just being adjacent to the third taxi district.
Right. Yeah. So and I guess that was in the back of my mind too, is that starting to use that First Street end would give us more credibility in our argument that Harbor Lights is encroaching into our littoral rights. So.
All right, moving right along. Alan, anything on newsletter and website?
I can always use things to put on our Facebook page for really anything that's going on. I put things from the hour and things I find in boating magazines that I think are interesting to the.
You might want to share to our site, because Bruce Lavallo has been posting every day.
Yeah.
And you might want to share to that site, his, or link them together or whatever.
Right.
We share that presentation, Jeff, that we put together here.
Yeah, why not? That's good for public consumption.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm happy I can post that on
on
our Facebook page.
All right, moving on to water quality. Joe Schneiderline.
You're muted, Jeff. Not Joe.
Thanks, John. Something for Chris to think about. As far as cleaning up the areas you were talking about, Save the Sound is always looking for places to clean up.
Okay.
And technically, they have access, anybody has access up to the mean high water. So once they get into that area, the access is automatically granted to us. That's just an aside. As far as the Water Quality Committee, Old business, we had Wilson Point is going forward. We're looking at the spring 2022, and Bill Mooney will continue his quest to find out where the storm drains are getting their bacteria from that are coming down, we think, from Norwalk into the north end of the Harbor View area. Under new business, we were supposed to have a discussion on trichlorope, which was going to be used by Eversource. And at the last minute before the meeting, Eversource said, we're not going to do it. They were going to use that to control trees along rivers and wherever they cut down trees. And, and apparently a campaign was launched, and Eversource said uncle and decided not to do it. And Louise Washer also looked into green roads. Norwalk has been having what we call green roads. And what that means is they moderate their salt on the roads when in proximity of water. So that helps minimize the salt impact on especially freshwater fish.
Joe?
And then there was Jeff presented and John presented the DEP permit for the walk bridge construction, and we discussed that, and that was it.
All right, thank you, Joe. Let's go to public comment.
Yeah, can I just ask Joe, what was that material that said that Eversource was going to put down? Is that something like Agent Orange or something, or?
Not quite that bad.
Okay.
It's
But it does permeate
TRI
into the aquifer.
It's TRICHLOPI.
Wait, run it by me again.
TRICHLOPI.
Okay.
And in reality, if what I've learned from doing work with a land trust, spraying raises hackles. It absolutely raises hackles, no matter what the substance. But you can paint this stuff on. There's dabbers that you can have that when you make a cutting, you dab it, and that focuses that material right on that plant only. So you minimize how much is being put out over a larger area. And it's a matter, now that's more labor intense. And that alone could be a reason why Eversource wouldn't want to do something like that.
I mean, that's still a chlorinated hydrocarbon. You can see, so.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Never mind.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank Jeff.
Joe, do you know why Eversource withdrew that proposal? Did they agree that it was potentially harmful, or did they just take it out of their proposal because that was the easiest thing to do?
They just agreed not to do it.
All right.
Now, I was not privileged to listen to their meetings or behind the scenes conversations, or just whether they decided to try another material. That I don't know.
Yeah, they probably never would admit that it or agree that it was harmful.
Probably not. Some of the studies that I read on that indicated that under controlled conditions, it could not be as detrimental as people think. However, that's controlled conditions where you limited overspray and stuff like that. And John's shaking his head.
Well,
Anything else?
Stop using it.
Pardon?
Not using it.
Yep. That's the important thing. Okay, John, I'm done.
Okay. All right, let's go to public comment. If you're out there from the public, would you raise your hand and we'll let you in? And seeing nobody raising their hand, right, Michelle?
Yeah, I don't see anyone
Yeah.
raising their hand.
right, actually,
Motion to adjourn, are we there?
no, we're at the minutes.
Okay.
Anybody have any additional comments to the minutes? Other than as amended?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Is there a second? Second by Dennis. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? I was gonna say objections, but, all right, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Great meeting, guys.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
A lot of good reports. Thank you, Michelle.
Bye,
You're a
everyone.
great doll, Michelle. And I don't know why some people, Pete Johnson told me he never got an invitation to the meeting. I might have got it, but I lost it. And it's, I don't know. I think we should send one out if you can possibly do it 10 minutes before the meeting supposed to start, and an additional one as a reminder to people.
Yeah, we try to do it. I know a couple of us that run the Zoom accounts, we try and resend them multiple times. For some reason, I think with certain email accounts, they just go to spam or they get bounced, because we hear it from different commissions of kind of them not getting the invitation. So we try and get them out to people, but we do and try to do multiple times. So
Yeah, but a lot of us
Got it.
get hundreds of emails a day. I do.
yeah.
And you know, so you try to burn them to keep the fresh ones there. And then